I grew up listening to, the first Run DMC. I used to see LL Cool J at the mall all the time in Queens, being 15 and 85 and 16 and 86. And, that was it right there. That's when the music was just on fire. It was much easier to get a record deal because you didn't have to go to Sony Records or Universal Records. There was so many small boutique record companies involved at the time that could get your record on the radio. Mr. Magic and Red Alert, they were on air at midnight. They were on air at 2 in the morning. And you had to stay up to listen to the music. The music now is a lot more watered down. If there's a couple of negative spots on the record business, specifically around hip hop, I would say that it was the evolution of that negative who's better than who in East Coast versus West Coast nonsense. Everybody was playing the tough guy role. Everybody had more guns than the army and what have you. Until now, when I look back on it, I didn't realize how dangerous it was or how negative it was. You didn't realize it while you were going through it. It became entertaining as a sideshow. That is when you know the music is gonna necessarily not get any better. I could have told everybody when Janet Jackson showed her breasts at the Super Bowl, I knew the album was gonna be terrible. And now the conversation is more about who has what business, right? 50 Cent owns a piece of vitamin water that was sold to Coca-Cola. That's the new competition. Signing 50 Cent initially when I was at Sony Records was, he was always a talented guy, and he's a brilliant marketer. He always had a level of humor, sarcasm, and an underlying violence. I mean, it was aptly titled, Get Rich or Die Trying. I mean, if you got shot at 9 times, right, what would you be thinking about? With Nas, I just seen a brilliant artist, a guy who knew how to write, who knew how to basically write poems. As you listen to his words and you get into it, you're like, he actually took his words and painted a picture. Now I could see it. And I just felt like if I worked with him, I could take his art and put it on a bigger platform. I'm a fan of the record business. I'm a fan of great artists. I was in the studio recently and Jay-Z, Puffy's in the studio with him making the record. And I'm like, this is what I mean. The energy is there. It felt like that real feeling. We don't care if this gets on the radio. We don't care if it gets on MTV or whatever. All we care about is that we're gonna make music that's culturally relevant, period, end of story. Whether it sells or whether it gets on the radio is not the point. What attracts me, to artists or anyone that I work with is just when their work is honest and it comes from a pure place. Because the public can detect the fraud quickly, and you don't ever want to get caught working with or trying to create something special out of something that ain't. Taking something that's not special and trying to put magic dust on it that's just too much work, man. When something's coming from the bottom, it's the streets. It's really the lowest common denominator of how people live and what they're listening to. It's an artist from Queens making a record in his house and bringing it to the radio station. When you're talking about movies and you're talking about Fortune 500 companies and you're talking about 60-year-old guys that's making these decisions, they're so far removed from that it takes too much time. By the time it gets to them, it's gonna be the most watered down, homogenized version of that culture that's been created. That's the problem. Like I said, I sit in that fine line between art and commerce, and straddling it is tough, but if you do it the right way, everybody's a winner.